Oral history interview with Mr. Emmett Alton Rogers, class of 1932, conducted by Marilyn Summers on April the 17th, 1996, at Mr. Rogers' home in Milledgeville, Georgia. The subject of the interview is his life at Georgia Tech and his life in general. Mr. Rogers, thank you so much for having us here today. We had a good time coming down to see you, and we're very happy to be with you. And we'd like to hear your whole story. So, can you begin at the beginning?
Well, what do you mean beginning?
I want to know when you were born and where you were born, at the beginning.
I was born on June the 28th, 1909 in Sparta, Hancock County, Georgia.
In Sparta? Okay.
Sparta.
How far away is that from Milledgeville?
25 miles.
And what happened to you?
Well,
were you raised in Sparta?
No, my father died when in 1918, leaving my my mother, a young widow with a little child.
That was you?
That was me, one child. When I was 13, the schools in those days in the counties like that wasn't very good. And if you wanted to get a better education, they were sent away to what they called preparatory schools back in those days. Mm-hmm. Schools like boarding schools, like Georgia Military College in Milledgeville. Mm-hmm. So when I was 13 years old, my mother put me on a train and sent me to Milledgeville, Georgia, on January the 4th. And she told me to get a hack, they called them back in those days, taxi, and tell him to take me to the president of GMC's office, which he did. He said, go right up those steps in the president's office right there on the right. Well, I went up there to see the president, and he knew I was coming. And see, it was midterm, January, middle of the year. And a little side light that's always been in my life, while I was in the president's office standing there, waiting, this little cadet came in with his military uniform on, you know. Back in those days, we wore the full military outfit. And he had a little broken tooth in front. And he smiled at me. He said, you a new boy? I said, yeah. How about rooming with me? I said, if the president says so. So that was my introduction to John A. Bass. Johnny B. Bass, I beg your pardon. And, of course, that was my introduction to Milledgeville and GMC.
That was a pretty nice welcome, wasn't it?
1913. I mean, I was 13.
You were 13.
That was 1923. So that was my beginning in Milledgeville. And
how long did you stay at Georgia Military Academy?
I graduated at Georgia Military College, it's called.
Okay. How long did you stay there?
I graduated in June of 1927.
And then what? You were there for a long time then.
Well, you see, back in those days, you had 5 classes. That's what they called preparatory. In those days, they had no 12th grade, so that so-called 12th grade was a preparatory school. I graduated there in June of 1927.
And did you know what you were going to do with yourself?
No. I have not a very good explanation why I went to Tech, but I was looking around. I didn't know where I wanted to go. And,
you knew you were going to go to college.
Oh, yeah. And along about that time, the kaolin industry was coming alive in this area. We are on the fall line where kaolin is. And the president of GMC at that time was Dr. E.T. Holmes, and he had a particular interest in the kaolin industry. And he had a particular interest in the ceramic department that was new at Georgia Tech. And the ceramic department was getting a lot of publicity on account of the development of the clay industry in this section of Georgia. So Dr. Holmes, I thought the world and all of him, and what he said was, he was one of the biggest men I've ever known, to make it short. He recommended Tech. I'd never seen Tech. I'd never been on the street where it was or anything. The first time I saw Tech was when I pulled up in front of Harris Hall as a freshman.
So his recommendation was strong enough for you to listen to him, huh?
To go to Georgia Tech.
So you applied by mail, telephone? How did you apply? You didn't just show up there,
Honey, I don't remember.
You don't remember? Well, you just showed up at GMC, but you didn't just show up.
No, I didn't show up at GMC, but he knew I was coming. The president knew I was coming, and Tech knew I was coming out.
That was Dr. Britton then.
Dr. M. Martin L. Britton. He was a great, great man. Turned out to be a fraternity brother of mine.
Oh, really? So
Very close to it.
How did you get to Atlanta? Did you take the train again?
No. The son of the president of GMC, he had a Ford automobile, which was rare back in those days, and 4 of us went up in that Ford automobile. Dr. Holmes' son, myself, and we had been very close friends, and 2 other boys from Milledgeville.
And they were all going to go to Georgia Tech?
Well, one of them was already a senior at Tech, and the other one was a freshman like we were. 3 of us were beginners, and he was already a senior.
Did all 3 of you finish?
No, unfortunately.
You did?
I was the only one finished, yeah.
So you kind of live the statistics when they say look to your left and look to your right.
Yeah.
Only one of you will remain. You were it, huh?
That's right.
What did you think when you saw the school? What was it like to you?
Well, there again comes into my life. I hit there late in the afternoon. Wasn't a soul available. Excuse me. Excuse me.
That's quite all right.
Excuse me. And this dormitory, and there was a trunk. Back in those days, you carried a trunk to college, because when you went in the fall, you were there till Christmas, and when you went back Christmas, you were there till June. And the trunk in the room, and had the name on the trunk. We used to put our names on the trunk. And I knew who my roommate was by that trunk. That's all I knew. Turned out he was a football player. But I walked down the hall, and I found the bath. And in that bath was a long row of lavatories in the center. And I was running there washing my hands and face and just standing in there feeling sort of lonesome, down. And there's somebody around on the other side of that partition doing the same thing. And so I decided to ease down there and look around that partition, see who it was, or see what it was. And just as I looked around, Johnny B. Bass looked around the other side. There we were.
Again.
Again. We had roomed together at GMC, yes. And I had no idea he was going to Tech. When we graduated, he'd gone home. There was Johnny B. Bass. And we were back together, and he was living 3 doors from me in Harris Hall.
How fun.
So Johnny and I were back together at
So you had
Tech.
A friend already.
I was set. I was all right. I had Johnny. So that was the first experience at Tech.
What program did you enroll in then? Did you go into ceramic engineering?
Well, in those days you took the freshman year, and then you specialized after that. Mm-hmm. And of course your freshman year is math, physics, chemistry, and all that. In my sophomore year, I enrolled with 22 others into ceramic engineering.
How wonderful. Well, who was your roommate?
A boy named Frink from Miami, Florida, and there'd been 2 Frink boys at GMC with me, and they were first cousins.
Were you thinking what a small world it was?
Small world. And it turned out that Jimmy Frink, back in those days, they didn't have 100 football players and all like that. They had a varsity and a scrub team. Jimmy Frink was the quarterback on the scrub team. In other words, he took it every afternoon out there in scrimmage. A great fella. He was killed in World War II flying over China.
But it was a good experience to know
wonderful,
him.
Wonderful. He was a wonderful fellow. He was a sophomore.
What did you think of your classes?
Well,
were they hard for you?
They were hard.
You had a good preparation for it, though. GMC was a good preparation.
Yes, sir. I was prepared.
But you were still challenged.
Oh, Lord, yeah. Tough.
Did you learn how to study?
Well, I just wonder sometimes whether I did.
Well, you were at Tech for a pretty happy time. 1927 was a pretty happy time at Georgia Tech.
Oh, yeah.
27, 28, 29, those were happy times with the
That's right.
Rose Bowl team. Do you remember all the excitement when they won the The football?
Well, my story about the Rose Bowl team was that we go back to Wop Roman. You know who Wop Roman is. Well, Wop Roman was director of the band, and he's the one that compiled Up with the White and Gold and rearranged Ramblin' Wreck into marching. He was a good musician. And Wop Roman was devoted to that Tech football team. And so this would be in my sophomore year now, when we were going to the Rose Bowl. Well, Wop had his best band that year. He had a 100-piece marching band, which in those days was out of this world.
And you were part of it.
Oh, yeah. And Wop, he was so proud of that band, they even bought us new uniforms. we were something. We were big stuff. And they don't have all the glamour that they have in bands now. We just a 100-piece marching band marching up down the field. Well, anyway, the first thing came up was to go take the band to California. Well, that took a lot of money, and Tech didn't have a lot of money. So it would take 2 weeks to go out there and back with a 100-piece band and whoever else with it. So Tech didn't have the money to do it. So they had all kind of ideas. The city of Atlanta suggested that they were going to send the band, Tech band, and that sort of fell through. And finally they devised some sort of plan which wasn't acceptable to the faculty at Georgia Tech. Wanted to put those boys in their band uniforms and send them downtown into the business section soliciting. Well, that was brought before the faculty this particular afternoon. And Wop's office was over there under Knowles Dormitory, where there's some offices. It's near the Moore building. But his office was in the basement of it. And Wop came to Tech as a barber. He was a barber over at the YMCA. He was a little short Italian. But he ended up director of the band, and a good one. But he kept that barber chair. And in his office, sitting right in the middle of the floor, was that barber chair, like he was going to cut hair. But he used that to sit in. He didn't sit at a desk, he sat in that barber chair. So I had a good friend that was in the band, a boy named Bill Owsley from our way. He and I both played the same instrument.
Which was?
Which is straight B-flat soprano saxophone.
Okay.
And Bill and I got together there, and we were anxious to hear the results of the Tech faculty meeting on the Hill. And we walked in Wop's office down there, middle of the afternoon or later. And Wop was sitting in that chair right by himself. And he told us that he had just gotten word from up on the Hill that nixed the whole deal. The band would not go to California, that the faculty had nixed it. It was out. Well, we were terribly crestfallen. we were brokenhearted. But later on that afternoon, Wop Roman was found dead in that barber's chair. So far as I can figure, we don't know. Bill and I don't know, because we left. We left him. We might have been the last two people that saw Wop Roman alive.
I never heard that before, that he...
And
he actually died before the Rose Bowl then.
oh, yes, yes.
Oh.
And I've always said he died of a broken heart.
He probably did.
I've always felt that.
Well, the band must have just been crushed.
It was.
Not to go and then to lose him too?
Lose him too, that's right.
Oh, how terrible.
But he was found dead there in that chair late on that afternoon.
Oh, what a sad story. Did you stay in the band?
Oh, yeah.
Who came in after him?
A.J. Garing. I don't know what his background was. But, well, he was a band director.
What else can you say?
He wasn't Wop Roman.
Did you listen to the game on the Crystals? Or
no, we didn't. The only place in town that afternoon that had any kind of radio or anything was the Georgia Power Company office. And we'd just get little excerpts from the people in the Georgia. Wasn't in the radio and television back then. that was satisfactory we could get it. We had little crystal sets, like you said.
Yeah, well, Joe Westbrook told us that of course, he was on the football team.
He was on the team. He was left guard.
He told us that some people had little crystal sets.
In Atlanta.
Yeah.
We found out the score, and that's all. Not how it happened or anything.
Yeah. And then Randy Whitfield went out as a reporter. He said he wrote for the newspaper, so you could hear.
Oh, Randy.
You could read it in the paper.
Yeah, Randy's a great fellow. He's president of my class.
Oh, he was in your class.
Still is president of my class.
Still is. Some things never change.
Well, Randy's a great fellow. And Joe is too. I see Joe every year.
Yeah. When you think back of those early days at Tech, the early days, what was your social life? Was it the band and the classes? What did you do?
No, your social life was your fraternity.
Tell us about that.
Well, I was very, very fortunate that I belonged to Kappa Alpha fraternity. A great bunch of boys. And some of us are still in contact with each other. We were very close.
What did you do together? What were the activities that you can tell us about?
Now, you're getting too personal. No, I'll tell you the truth, there wasn't a whole lot of social you had to study. And the fraternity house at that time, they had rules, and we had to abide by them.
Where was the fraternity house?
The fraternity house was right back of All Saints Church on North Avenue, and it was originally the rectory for All Saints Church, the rectory where the pastor lived, of course. And it became the KA fraternity house. And we were very closely allied with the church.
So you were right on top of the church.
Well, one of the boys married the priest's daughter. But anyway,
to cement
Dr. Meminger, the priest at the church, was not a KA. But Bishop H.J. Michael, who was the bishop of the Diocese of Atlanta, was the knight commander of the Kappa Alpha fraternity. And he visited our house quite often. His home was out on 17th Street, and he'd walk down to the KA house and visit us there. He loved to play bridge, so he could find a bridge game at the KA house. So we were very close to the Episcopal Church right there.
So then sometimes you guys got together and played cards then?
Oh, yeah, the bridge game going all the time.
Oh.
All the time.
That was one social activity.
Sometimes there was a little poker going on back in the back room.
We won't talk about it.
We won't talk about it.
Did you take part in the interfraternity council dances? Did you go to any of the dances?
Oh, Lord, yeah, that was a big thing.
Did you find any girls to go to any dances with?
Well, let me tell you, I was just telling Patsy this morning, I thought of a little bit of trivia that I hadn't thought of in 50 years. We had each fraternity, or most of the fraternities, would have what they call their formal for the year. Mm-hmm. That was a big deal. They had that formal dance, and during at some place like Piedmont Driving Club or some nice club, a big deal, yeah, big deal. And, well, anyway, the way you were invited to those, say, ATO fraternity was having that formal. They would send an invitation to the KA house or to the other houses. But on the back of that invitation would be a list of the members of that fraternity whom they were inviting. They wasn't inviting the whole fraternity.
Oh, okay. It was very specific.
On the back of that is specific. And those were put on the bulletin board, and you looked on the back of the ATO's invitation, see if your name was on there. If it wasn't, you wasn't invited. So that was a custom in those days. How they handle it now, I wouldn't have any idea.
My goodness.
Yes.
So did you ever get invited?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
I had friends and
Good.
And we had some nice time. Now, the interfraternity council that you were mentioning, they had 2 series of dances, 4 dances in a row. I think 3 night dances, and they had what they called tea dances back in those days, which was quite the thing. And they'd always bring in some nationally known band, some big time band. Yeah. And that's what the Interfraternity Council did.
Where did you find your dates?
There's plenty of girls in Atlanta.
You found some girls in Atlanta?
Oh, yeah.
There was, well, you didn't have a car.
That's right. None of us had cars.
So how did you
I was
pick
just
'em
telling
up?
Patsy this morning that there's only one boy in the fraternity house that had a car. You wouldn't believe that, but he was the only one that had a car, and he was really a graduate student.
Well, how did you go get your dates for the dance then?
Various ways we'd scramble around. We had Atlanta boys that belonged to the chapter, and they generally had access to their parents' cars, and you have a friend in Atlanta, he'd take you double date, and a lot of times the girls had the family cars, and
Really?
they used them. Yes, sir. They were very nice about it.
Did a girl ever take you?
Yeah, young lady I was going with had a nice car.
Well, you were lucky. You were one of the lucky ones.
That's
then.
right. Yeah.
What else did you do for a social life? Played cards, went to dances. How about the movies?
Yes, that was a big thing back in those days. We had the big movie theaters downtown, gorgeous, comparable to the Fox Theater. There's several of them right downtown, and in those days they had stage shows. You'd have the movie, then you'd have the stage show. And for 35 cents, you'd have one whale of an evening.
You could do it upright. Huh?
Yes, sir.
You were right there during the time they were building the Fox Theater.
That's right.
You remember going and
I
watching?
saw them building it. And the interesting thing about the Fox Theater that was close to me, and I was interested in ceramics and brick and white kaolin. If you go look at the back of the Fox Theater now, all the way across, it's white brick. But you see that half of it is one color white brick, and the other half is another color white brick. That first half that was put up there was with Golden, Georgia, right below us down here, 20 miles. White brick made in Golden, Georgia. And right in the midst of building the Fox Theater, that brick company went bankrupt.
Oh, my goodness.
So they had to finish the Fox brickwork out there with white brick from some other plant.
And they couldn't match the color exactly.
No, it couldn't.
So if I went and stood at the back outside of the Fox,
if you
I'd
go
be
stand
seeing
and look
that,
at the back of the Fox Theater, you'll see two-color white brick.
That's a good piece of trivia.
And I never will forget studying all night one night. And about 5 or 6 of daylight, I just had it. And I knew I couldn't go to sleep because it was too close to class time. So I walked from the dormitory up to the Fox Theater and walked all through the construction as they were building it early in the morning before the workmen ever got there.
Had a first-hand look.
So I saw the Fox Theater built from ground up.
It was a pretty exciting thing to do, to see a big building like that going up, wasn't it?
That's right.
It was an unusual building.
Terrific.
So do you remember going to it once it was finished?
Oh, yes. When we came back after Christmas, that was a big thing, go to the Fox.
Well, it opened Christmas Day of
That's
1929.
right. That's right, in the spring. In fact, I had one fraternity brother there in the house. They had a chorus. Oh, they had a pit orchestra there, I don't know how many. Then they had a chorus, a male chorus, and all kind of things like that. And my fraternity brother was in that chorus. He went for 2 or 3 shows a day up there to the Fox.
Oh, how could he do that and go to school?
Well, he worked it in there somehow.
He was paid a princely sum, maybe.
I don't know what he would pay.
So when you went, you saw stage shows and movies, the whole thing.
Oh yeah, and I always had big chorus lines, you know, and that sort of thing. And
They called them the sun-kissed beauties, the chorus line.
Well, one night, the KA house was right around the corner there at All
Right,
Saints
you were
Church.
close.
We wasn't but a block and a half from it. One night they had the whole chorus line right at the KA house.
Well, now there's a story I want to hear. Somebody must have been pretty convincing to have the chorus girls dance down. Huh?
Never seen as many women in your life.
You remember you were there.
I was there.
The whole course, there were 50 of them.
I don't know, a little house full of them.
What fun. Lots of good memories of that time, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Lots of good memories. Do you remember the Biltmore Hotel?
Quite well.
That was built just before you came, 1926. So
That's
it was
right.
brand new.
Well, we had all of our banquet features and things like that down at the Biltmore. That was Holmes down there for the...
Was it beautiful?
Oh, it was wonderful.
Because now it isn't.
No.
And we just wondered, it was beautiful in those days?
That's right, and we had a fraternity, a group of us along a 4-year span there that had been very, very close through those years, have hung together, and we've had 2 reunions of that group in the fraternity. And we've had both of them back at the Biltmore. And the last time we went back to the Biltmore, it was pretty wretched. We were pretty disappointed.
We keep hoping somebody will buy it and fix it again.
Oh, it was a grand old place in those days. That ballroom up there was wonderful. And the banquets and all like that.
Did you continue to play in the band all the 4 years you were there?
Well, in my senior year, I was in a car wreck. And with 2 of my fraternity brothers from Emory. They were boys from Milledgeville. And after Christmas holiday, going back well, yeah, I'm getting a little ahead of my story there. I played my senior year, but it was at Christmas holidays that I was in this car wreck. I'd only gone to school half a year, and we were on semester basis in those days, and semester didn't end until February. And so I was knocked out on January the 1st, coming back to school. Now, the 2 Emory boys were killed.
Oh, what a tragedy.
And I stayed in Emory Hospital for a long, long time.
You were a very young man to have to deal with so much tragedy.
It was tragic.
Oh, my.
One of them was my very closest friend. We'd been very close for years, and one of them was killed at the scene of the accident, and Harry lived 8 days, and I lived in that hospital for a long time.
Oh, my goodness. Did you try to keep up your studies and still graduate, or did that?
Oh, no, I was out of studying. No, I was just trying to stay alive.
Did you graduate on time, though, I mean, or did you have to go at extra long time?
I was out. That was my senior year. I was out at Christmas.
Oh, so then you
Now, I have to say this. When I got back there in fall, I went back in fall on crutches and leg braces and everything else. But when I got back there in the fall, they were mighty good to me at Tech. Some of my classes that I had gotten up to Christmas in, they let me take a special examination in. They were good to me. And
so you could catch up that way then?
Well, of course, I lost the whole spring session. So I went on there in the fall and stayed there another year. So I was at Tech 5 years.
Did you ever take jobs in the summertime? When you went home, you mentioned going home to back to Milledgeville.
Oh,
was
yeah.
Milledgeville home then?
Yeah, that's right.
So did you work when you came home for the summers?
Well, one summer I went off with a group selling magazines. We went all over 3 states selling magazines.
Well, that must have been an experience.
It was.
Were you good at selling magazines?
No, so I wasn't.
So you knew that wasn't what you were going to do?
I didn't know how to lie then.
What other summer jobs did you have?
And the next summer, I worked in the brickyard. I was taking ceramics. And so to get practical experience, I worked in Macmillan's brickyard here in Milledgeville. It was tough.
You were picking up bricks?
Well, doing everything in the brickyard. I was doing labor.
Labor is what it's
Labor
called.
in the brickyard, that's right. I did labor, and I did it all summer.
That was real life.
It was real life. You worked 6 days a week then.
Oh, boy.
Full 6 days.
You were a stronger person when you went back to school.
I made that whole summer in the brickyard.
Okay. Mr. Rogers.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about some of your professors there. Do you remember anybody?
Oh, yes. I remember particularly the math department professors, because that was the only subject I could do well in, was math.
Oh, you were a good
I wasn't a very good
huh?
student in other things, but I could handle math. I remember Dr. D.M. Smith. And,
what was he like?
Oh, he was a great fellow. Great fellow, but he was a wonderful mathematician. If you could learn math under Dr. Smith, he was a fellow that helped the football team terrifically. Back in those days, they had no student advisors and coaches and all like that for academics. And I've been over to the academic building on Sunday morning, the day after a football game, Saturday afternoon, and seen Dr. Smith over there with a room full of football players coaching them in math. They just played football the day before, but he was over there coaching them in math.
We're lucky we had him, huh?
Oh, Lord, we had him. He was a friend to the football team. He was a great fellow, and in that, I had a particular friend in the math department named Jimmy Stengall. I don't know what became of him. I ran into him several years after I graduated downtown in an office building in Atlanta, and he was no longer at Tech. But he was an excellent math professor. He had his doctorate from Princeton, and he taught me in 2 or 3 courses in math. I was very, very fond of Dr. Jimmy Stengall. And then there's Dr. Skiles, who was the dean of education. You probably run into him through the years, have you? He was a great teacher. Those fellows in the math department, they had several excellent. Another fellow named Roy Mundorf. Has anybody ever mentioned Roy Mundorf to you?
Well, you tell me about him.
Roy Mundorf was a basketball coach.
And
But back in those days, the basketball coach had to teach in school, too. One Bill Alexander, the head football coach, taught math, too.
oh, did he?
Yes, he did. He taught a class.
Everybody had to wear 2 hats then.
Everybody had to be on the faculty. And Roy Mundorf, I had him particularly. I had him in one of the calculuses. Can't pronounce it now. And he was an excellent teacher, but he was also the basketball coach. I was very strong on the math department. And
What about in your ceramics classes?
well, that's a bad story. There was 22 of us started out in ceramics. Have you heard that story?
No, tell me.
Well, there was 22 of us, and in the ceramic department, Dr. Henry, J.B. Henry, I believe it was the head of the ceramic department. It was very, very small, see. And he had a fellow in there that just got his doctorate from the University of Illinois, and we sort of inherited. His name was Harry Vaughn, V-A-U-G-H-N. And Mr. Vaughn sort of made it hard on us. He just told us that wasn't any of us going to ever graduate, wasn't any of us had a chance to graduate. And so the 22 of us, 21 of us took other courses, and before the year was out. We didn't flunk anything, but we saw we were up against the hard. But the one man that graduated out of that 22, Mr. Vaughn had threatened that you couldn't have any other activity and take ceramics. You couldn't have any, you couldn't be on the technique, you couldn't be in the band, you couldn't be on the football team. You ain't do nothing but take ceramics. Well, the one man that graduated was a guard on the football team, all Southern guard, named Jim Brooks.
He did it anyway.
He did it. But the rest of us, the other 21, went other ways.
Well, didn't the school think it was kind of strange that
I think so, because Mr. Vaughn didn't stay there.
That was the end of Mr. Vaughn.
I don't know whether that was the end. I don't know. I don't know what happened to him later. We lost all contact.
Well, what did you start taking then?
Well, probably this group and some others. We had the School of Commerce at Tech at that time. They did away with that in '34. But with the School of Commerce there's a lot of good things you could take over there. And between our sciences and the School of Commerce, this particular group, they called it General Science. And that was the beginning of what you call it, IBM, Industrial Management. That was a pioneer industrial management group.
So you were one of the pioneers.
One of the pioneers of industrial management. That's where it came from.
I see.
And those 21 boys, all of us went into that.
I see. So you could still stay at Tech and
we stayed at Tech and graduated at Tech.
And stayed in the band.
Well,
and everything else.
We found a lot of things that we wanted. For instance, I took 3 or 4 courses in law, commercial law over in the commerce school, and some other.
Where was the commerce school? Physically, where was
the old Swan Dormitory. You know where Swan Dormitory?
I do.
Well, that was the School of Commerce, and it was a real high school. It was rated very highly in the country.
So you had good professors
And,
there.
well, oh yeah, Dr. George Sparks, who founded Georgia State, he was one of my professors. Dr. George Sparks founded Georgia State University. It started out at Georgia Tech Evening School of Commerce. You know that story. Well, I took 2 courses under Dr. George Sparks.
They let women go to school there.
Well, that was the Evening School of Commerce.
Yeah, that's where they let the women go to school.
That's when that's right. Well, talking about the professors up there, I can just think back on a lot of them. They were great fellows, wonderful.
Did you feel like it was a good climate for you as a young man to learn in? You knew you had to work hard, right?
Oh yes, they made you work hard, but there's the old saying up at Tech that the students, undergraduates, are the most disgruntled, gripingest, meanest professors and all that, and then when they graduate, it's the greatest school there ever was, the best professors ever was, best classes ever was. So
you fit the pattern there.
That's right.
Do you remember ever
No,
going?
I liked all my professors.
Do you ever remember going to the YMCA?
Over there across the street where they, oh sure, that's where they had a little auditorium over there. They had special things over there, and we had a little drama club, and a little
The marionettes?
all that was rehearsed over there in the Y, and there's dormitory space in the Y. And Walt Roman had his first barbershop in the Y.
Oh, did he?
That's where he
downstairs?
started. That's
Oh,
right.
I see.
See, they had a barber out there.
Did you ever go to any of the performances of the marionettes?
Oh yeah.
Oh, did you?
Oh yeah.
So the students did support that kind of thing?
Oh yeah.
That was kind of an interesting thing for a technological school.
Yeah, it was. But I had a couple of fraternity brothers that was interested in it. And
You supported whatever they were doing?
whatever they did, that's right.
How about football? Were you a big football fan?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Always was, still am.
Tell me about it.
Well,
How many football games have you been to?
well, I've seen 69 consecutive Tech Georgia games.
That has to be somebody's record. My
69.
goodness.
And Tech resumed relations with Georgia in 1925. And Tech won the ball game 3-0. Doug Wyckoff kicked the field goal. And they had been separated since 1916. It got bad during the war.
It did.
Some bad feelings. Bad. Still exist. And the second game, they had no stadium in Athens. So the second game, the second game they played in 26, Georgia lucked out and won 14-13. There's a boy named George Morton, halfback. Scored 2 touchdowns second half, and Georgia won the second game. Well, the third game was at 1927 when I was a freshman.
That's your first time. Huh?
That was the first time in the 27. I've been there ever since.
How wonderful.
Tech won that one 12-0.
You've seen us win and you've seen us lose.
I've seen the top of the hill and the bottom.
Did they always play the Rambling Wreck, even way back then?
Play the Rambling Wreck.
Yeah, the song. Did the band always play Rambling Wreck?
Oh yeah, that was it.
Just like it is today?
Yes, like it. But maybe we played it better.
You played it better, I bet you did. It was a big deal. It was a big deal. In those days, Tech was the only show in town, so everybody came.
That's right. It was the only show in town.
Lots of fun.
Lots of fun.
Did you ever go on any of the shirttail parades?
Oh, I'm glad you brought Shirttail Parade. I thought about that, though. That's the first time I thought of that in 50 years.
Tell me, did you go?
I think Shirttail Parades went out by the time I was a freshman. We had an outstanding freshman football team the year that I was a freshman, and after, I forget what game it was, Alabama game I believe it was, and we had 1,150 freshmen, and they were very enthusiastic. Well, it had been customary through the years to have those shirttail parades. That's before they had all that traffic in Atlanta. What the shirttail parade meant was you hold on to the fellow in front of the shirttail.
Literally.
Or his belt. And there they'd go, just like a snake chain, right down through the middle of Atlanta. And they'd come to a theater. They'd go right on in the door, all the way right on across the stage. the actors have to get out of the way. That shirttail parade on. And I don't know where it'd break up somewhere downtown and break up. And the shirttail parade was quite a thing. But it had gotten where it wasn't too popular with the traffic, you know, and that sort of thing. It wasn't encouraging. But freshmen, you can't stop freshmen, you know. They're going anyway. Well, this is our Alabama game. And the Atlanta Police Department was right there at the corner of North Avenue and Techwood Drive. And that's where the congregation was, where it's forming. And the Atlanta Police Department tried to take charge. But it got to be the biggest mess you ever saw. 1,100 freshmen at the Atlanta Police Department. But they didn't stop the shirttail parade. It went on. And I don't believe there's ever one after that, but that was pretty bad.
They started again in the 40s.
They did?
Wow, yeah.
That's
in the 40s.
Too much
It stopped
traffic.
it then. It stopped it then.
Well, that...
So did you happen to be there?
Yeah, I was right there.
You saw the whole thing?
Yeah.
You remember going downtown then?
Yeah.
What did the school say after that? Did Dr. Britton say don't do it anymore?
I don't remember. But it...
Do you remember if the whistle blew then?
Oh, Lord, yeah. The whistle blew up to here not too long ago. That old whistle, I've heard it blow a million times.
Do you remember your graduation?
Well, we went to school by that whistle. You got up in the morning by that whistle. You went to classes by that. Do you still have it?
It's there.
Still got the old whistle?
Yeah. I don't know if it's
I thought you were talking about blowing the whistle after football games.
I meant after football games.
After football games, they blew it on into the night. That's right.
Everybody knew it. Do you remember your graduation?
Yeah.
Where did you graduate?
Of course, we had no Coliseum back there then. We didn't have a auditorium to handle a crowd. And I think there's 350 or 375 of us graduated. That was a big class. And they rigged up a outfit there. It was old Knowles Hall, which is the Moore building there. They fixed a stage down here right in front of that and put chairs all the way back up the hill. And that was where we graduated.
Right there out in front of everybody, huh?
Well, it was right out in the open, and that's where we graduated.
It must have been a happy day for you.
Oh, yeah.
After your accident and everything,
I finally graduated.
And you came out into a world that wasn't very receptive of you.
Well, I don't know, the spirit and the attitude of the whole group. For instance, there's 4 of us out of my fraternity, and none of us had a job. None of us had a job whatsoever.
There were lots of people that didn't have jobs.
And, I didn't know if any of the tech graduates had jobs. There wasn't any interviews back there then. Well, nobody come in looking for you.
What'd you do?
Huh?
What did you do?
You didn't do nothing.
Just go back to Milledgeville?
Yeah, that's all you could do. Wasn't any jobs in Atlanta. None whatsoever. I went back up there about a year later and registered at the Dinkler Plaza Hotel, and I wasn't paying attention to the bellhop. And we got up in the room, and the bellhop turned around at one of my friends that I graduated with. He said, "Hell, that's the only job I got, and I'm proud of it."
He had something to do.
He was bellhopping at the, well, that was a good job then. So, no, there wasn't any jobs in 32.
Well, when did you get a job?
I had odd little odds and ends for a long time there. 2 or 3 years before I ever got, longer than that, before I ever got a pretty good job.
And what field did you go into?
Cotton business, and ended up selling fertilizer all over Georgia. Not all over Georgia.
You turned into a salesman then?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I thought you said the magazines showed you weren't a good salesman.
Yeah, I wasn't. I sold magazines.
Now, fertilizer, that's another thing. You could sell that, huh?
Well, get by anyway. Wasn't any too good jobs. They were just token things.
Well, tell us about your career.
Well,
you went into the cotton business, and that must have been what, in the late 30s?
34.
Oh, middle 30s.
And then the fertilizer. And Then World War II come along. And
What happened to you during World War II?
I had this broken leg. I had a second lieutenant's commission from GMC. I'd been commissioned, and I was sworn in as a second lieutenant at Tech by the military department. So I was a military officer. But when they called me in to active service, the doctor just wouldn't let me in on account of having been broke up like I was. So I thought I could go. But
was that, what, about 1939, 1940, 41?
40, I reckon, when they called in all these boys in to active duty.
So what did you do then? Did you come back to Milledgeville?
Come back to Milledgeville.
And work?
Yeah. I finally got with the Internal Revenue Service, and I spent 25 years with them.
You did?
Yeah. And
what did you do with them?
Well, I was in the audit division.
You were one of the bad guys.
Collection, yeah.
You don't want to tell us about that?
No, I don't want to talk about that.
You know, no. Did somewhere along the way you decide you were going to have a family?
Oh, yeah, I had that family in 1941.
When did you meet Frances?
She came here to college at Georgia College in 34, wasn't it? She graduated in 38.
And when did you get married?
We married in 41.
Okay, so you came back to Milledgeville to get married and start a family then.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Tell us about that. How'd that go?
Well, Al came along in 1945, and she came along in 1947.
It's Patsy.
Patsy said, don't tell her.
So you had a good life here in Milledgeville.
Oh, Lord, yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful.
And you've stayed active with Georgia Tech. You stayed active with the Masons.
Yeah, I became very, very active with the Masons, and still active with the Masons.
If you had to go back and do it all over again, would you still go to Tech?
Sure.
Sure. It's been good for you.
Yes, sir. I've never seen a Tech graduate yet that was sorry he went to Tech, no matter what field he ended up in.
It doesn't matter that you didn't end up being a ceramic engineer.
No.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all. Because, incidentally, the ceramic industry has gone by the board in these years. At that time, we had 3 good ceramic industries here in Milledgeville. The largest pipe manufacturing company, second largest in the world, was here in Milledgeville. It's gone. Macmillan Brick, who made the finest building brick you ever saw, it's been gone for years. Stevens Pottery, who made the finest fire brick out of kaolin, it's been gone for years. So the ceramic industry's been gone in this area. And
can you think of any things that, when you think back of your Tech time, that you want to share with us? Anything that we didn't cover? Or do you feel like we pretty much told your story?
Wait a minute, she's...
Tell me about your next career after the IRS. What happened
Well,
then?
when I left the IRS in 1964, I ran into an old friend that I'd had years before. He had just retired from the Dr. Pepper 7-Up business in Pennsylvania, sold his company, and we ran into each other, and he said, how about going business with me? Doing what? He said, real estate. And I don't know about real estate. He said, and so he talked me into it, and he and I went into business, and for 25 years we had a very, very successful career.
And what did you do?
What did I do?
Did you sell commercial real estate?
We sold anything we could buy or sell.
You were in the business of selling again.
That's right, we were selling, and we were very, very
So did you
fortunate.
do appraisals and things
Well,
like that?
along the line, I read some of my tech training and everything, I became fascinated with appraising, and which is quite a science. There's a lot of good appraisers, but they have to be well educated. And I became interested in that during the time we were handling real estate, and I got food and appraising, and before it was over with, I'd got where I was just full-time appraising.
And enjoying it?
And loving it. And I appraised for VA 22 years during that time. All the VAs done this section I did the appraisal for, and just got real fascinated with it.
That's wonderful.
And I appraised up to about, how long ago, 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years. Got where it's dangerous for me to climb in and out of houses and things. So I retired 3 times.
Now, see, some people aren't good at that, but you're good at it,
I
aren't
retired from
you?
the Internal Revenue Service, and I retired from all farm sales, and I retired from appraising.
You just like to collect retirement parties and things, huh?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well,
And-
Mr. Rogers, you've had a very rich life.
Yeah.
And your tech degree has served you well?
That's right. And I've, in recent years, and now I deal in the stock market, and been very, very fortunate there.
It's a good thing you took care of that School of Commerce and
That's
got
right.
those classes in.
Those classes I had in that School of Commerce really has helped me,
It's given you a broad view.
particularly the law.
Do you stay in touch with your tech people, your friends?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about the old days?
Oh, yes,
Any stories?
Do you, by any chance, know my friend Gene Clary up at the, and you in the alumni division and don't know Gene Clary?
Are you going to tell me about it?
Well, Gene has given Tech an awful lot of money.
Well, I will have to talk to him someday then.
You better. He has given a bundle of money to Georgia Tech. You know the Moore building? They named the auditorium in the Moore building.
It's the Clary Auditorium.
Clary Auditorium, that's
I'm
Gene
familiar
Clary.
with the name, but I do not
Well,
know.
Gene and I stay in close. He's been down here 2 or 3 times recently to visit
Well,
me, and I
that's-
go up there. He and I stay in contact. And, well, Randy Whitfield, I see Randy ever so often. He's a great fellow. I keep a lot of tech contacts.
So it's good to have those tech contacts.
Surely.
Sure.
Surely.
Well, thank you so very much for telling us your story. We've enjoyed hearing it.
I don't know what you got.
We got lots of good stories out of you, and we appreciate your time so very much. Thank you.